I'm Peggy Anne Salz. This is PocketGamer Connects London, and talking about the top topics independently of coming here to the Digital Turbine stand, talking to a lot of publishers who are saying this is the year they're going to take the plunge. They're looking at alternatives, which is great for you, Itai Cohen, because that's what they're looking at and that's what they're coming to. How is it going for Digital Turbine? That discussion used to be a tougher one than it was nowadays, I think.
Absolutely. There's a lot more interest, and the conversations are easier, and they're also coming our way. So it seems like the industry is going through this educational period. There's a lot of curiosity around it. And we're also seeing more opportunities opening up for developers to dip their toes in the water. We're very happy to also be a part of that process for them. And I think that this is, to your point, exactly right. We're going to see more publishers experimenting this year. And for some of them, we hope to see the early success stories that will be the leading path for the rest of the industry.
What is it like? Has it gotten a bit easier? Because, again, we've been talking about this in the industry for a while. And I remember publishers telling me a couple years back, like 5, it's like, sounds good, but, an alternative build, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to upkeep it. But now, what is it? Is it because AI made it easier, or what is going on? Or they just said, you know what? I have nothing to lose and everything to gain.
I think that there are 3 main components for developers to think about as they're considering alternative, distribution opportunities. One is the need to actually provide a separate build, and for some, that's a barrier. So there is a technical investment that goes into that. There are companies in the ecosystem that solve specifically for that. So there are ways to get around where it's not just cumbersome and an additional resource investment from your own tech team. You could outsource some of that work. Flexion is an example of a company that does something like that. We have a partnership with them to facilitate that process for developers. The second component is, what is my footprint? What is my potential opportunity for distribution through the alternative platform? And that historically has been a challenge for developers because they didn't necessarily know how many devices would have an alternative store. And again, now there's more data available. There's more opportunity for developers to get a sense of the scale that's available to them. And then the third one is there a way for me to control that distribution outside of just placing a title in an alternative store? So user acquisition tools for alternative titles. And again, those are solutions that are now emerging that are making it easier for you to not only make the technical investment to publish an alternative title, but actually invest in the growth of that title. You can control your own destiny a little bit more. And that's a really important component for developers to know that it's not just send your title across the other side and pray for the best result possible. You can actually, use the same creative, same UA methodologies that you've used in the past, but just for alternative app versions.
Because another thing that's very important is the UA itself. At one level, yes, it's about acquiring the users. But again, very important, the data about the user behavior. In fact, I'm talking to some publishers, it's almost like, not that they're saying it's going to be a loss-making business, they're just saying it's not going to be huge, which is obvious because you have to be in the major stores too, and the alternative stores. But the data is turning out to be the real prize.
I think that we are going to challenge a bunch of age-old assumptions about the app business as we transition to this alternative app distribution reality. The incumbent stores are not going anywhere in the immediate future. They're still going to be the lion's share of the business. That's clear to everybody. But as you're transitioning to alternative stores, a bunch of really important things are changing. So the revenue share around in-app purchase, as it's becoming more developer-friendly, that changes the math on LTV. When it changes the math on LTV, it also changes the math on UA, because your ROAS calculations are impacted by your revenue calculations, right? By the revenue potential, and each in-app purchase is now worth more to the developer. So there is a learning curve right now as developers have to redo that math. But to your point, the data is available. As you're testing, you can understand the impact on LTV, that the different, distribution footprint versus in-app purchase revenue share, whatever ad implementation you're doing, and is that the same or different from your original versions of the app? All of those things change the math, but the data is now informing developer decisions in a much more holistic way than it used to.
And possibly another catalyst is really AI, because the testing was going to be beyond our capacity to do it. And now it's like, no, we can scale testing. We have AI, we have creatives, we can just keep on not necessarily churning them out, but it is a numbers crunching thing too, right? And this is now possible. So maybe something extra that plays in favor of this.
I think that the developers that are getting AI right are enhancing their operations. So it's just easier to get more done with fewer people or fewer resources. And that is the game changer here. It's not like AI is making all the decisions for me. It's not like it even necessarily makes the calculations. It technically might make the calculation, but there still needs to be a well-informed human behind it to put in the right assumptions in place, right? And so we're not completely disintermediating the human out of the process, but we're making the human more efficient and more scalable. And I think that allows fewer people and smaller teams to get more done. And again, that opens the door for me to dip my toes into the alternative waters, because I have the capacity to manage that process too, as I'm outsourcing some of the, menial, repetitive work to things like AI.
Another interesting topic I'm hearing more about, and I have to say, heard it at Digital Turbine first, was talking about the attention economy and attention metrics. And this was like, 2 years ago when you were doing your brag report, and even before then. But now I'm hearing more publishers say, we do have attention. We need to be doing more with it. And they're thinking more about being an entertainment play. And an entertainment play means ultimately we're going to see some brand inventory. And we're already seeing that. We're already seeing more of that. And that's another side of what Digital Turbine speaks about, talks about, shares data about. Brand inventory. It's not caught up to attention. Attention spent in games is not the same as brand spent in games. But how is that evolving? Because 2025, we're at the start. A lot can still happen.
I think that the trend is inevitable, and it's because brands appreciate the quality of gaming inventory more and more. And it's both because of the diversity of the audience. I've been to some really great sessions here at PGC talking about, gamers are actually becoming more diverse, because as people age, they no longer stop to be gamers. So the community of gamers around the world is becoming more diverse and more relevant for more types of brands. But on top of that, it's also a great technical environment to deliver an ad. It captures the whole screen. The user is already very engaged. It's not a second screen when you're playing a game. It's not like you do when you're on your phone while you're watching TV. You're fully invested in the experience, so you're more attentive also to the advertising that is coming through. And because of these gaming mechanisms like rewarded advertising, the value exchange experience creates this beneficial effect to how brands are being perceived, because they are part of this process of being rewarded and making progress in the game that you're playing. So all of these things work in favor of this marriage between brands and games. And then I think another really important trend to recognize here is that the user experience from an ad standpoint has only been declining. And once you incorporate more brands into the mix, you actually elevate the user experience. Your game becomes more premium when you have a more diverse set of advertisers, interacting with your users, and it's not just the same repetitive and sometimes aggressive user acquisition ads.
And also the publishers have evolved. They're thinking more about first-party data. They're actively working on strategies to pass the right data. What does that data look like nowadays? Because publishers are also asking me, I'm in the industry, so they say, what are people telling you about what the data is? Because that's also changed a lot. It's about trying to figure out what do the brands want to have, but the brands don't actually say what they want to have. So you have to sort of backward engineer it a bit. What does that look like? What is the data that's most valuable for publishers to be thinking about?
You're raising a really good point, because historically, developers have been thinking about data in the context of their own business. So segmentation in favor of serving live ops, or in favor of serving user acquisition. The brand advertising lens to data is very different, because brands buy personas. So they have a target audience that is defined, by a certain age range, by gender, by certain behavioral patterns. And a lot of those can be deduced or sometimes even provided in a consented manner inside of a game environment. And so developers now have more than one way to package first-party data. Some of it is for the performance user acquisition use case or segmentation to optimize monetization. That's the bread and butter business. But then if you find the right partner that can actually communicate these data signals around a persona, then you're going to attract more brand demand because you're going to be matched with brands looking for that specific persona that is part of your user base.
So it is about making that match, and there's a lot going on, a lot of dynamics in the industry. I'm feeling 2025 is going to be very, very different. What is the Digital Turbine contribution going to be to 2025? What is coming, or what are you deepening?
I think there are three main areas that I would want to call out. One that we spoke about is the alternative distribution opportunity, and we believe that that's when we'll start seeing scale and we'll start seeing success stories coming out of that, which is, again, going to kind of show a path that this is possible for more and more developers. Hopefully that also creates a better user experience in the alternative stores because it's going to create diversity of more apps that you're able to find in those stores. And so it's going to be a benevolent cycle of more and more engagement. The second one is just providing a better user experience to app users, to game users through this diverse advertising experience. And I think that's something that we bring to the table, which is, again, a mix of performance and brand demand and an ability to directly match those first-party signals that developers have with different types of advertisers. And then the third component for us is just creating more opportunities with getting apps directly to devices. We're seeing increased interest in that, age-old bread and butter business for Digital Turbine. And I think that it's a mix between new on-device experiences that we are going to launch this year that are going to just reinvent some of the distribution opportunity in direct-to-device user acquisition, alongside with a growing global footprint. So the same experiences are also going to be relevant in more markets.
That's true, and more opportunities to be on device, because that's what I'm hearing about the geos. I was just talking to some people who had great research from MENA that this year may be pivotal. We've been talking about it for a while, but I think we're going to see things like that. Where are you excited about? Which geos?
I think Latin America is a very interesting opportunity, and it's a highly engaged audience. It's a highly engaged and currently underserved audience for many developers. And again, as more hybrid monetization strategies are being utilized by more developers, it reconfigures the math for markets that maybe previously developers struggled with. And then some key markets in APAC as well. I think there are a lot of opportunities where the scale exists, the engaged user base exists, but maybe the access wasn't as good in the past, or the ability to optimize wasn't as good. And I think some vendors that are going to make progress in those regions are going to unlock opportunities for developers for global expansion in those two, what was considered beyond the traditional focused markets for many developers.
I like that note, going beyond, pushing beyond the boundaries and the barriers, and certainly continuing the conversation with you to see where you'll be pushing off to. Thanks for the idea on personas. I'll be watching that. Itai, it was a pleasure, and it was enlightening. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
This show is all about how to do your job better, how to make an amazing game, how to market it, and you have a say. So if you have a story or know someone we need to shine a light on, then we would love to hear from you.
We want to hear from you. We want to reflect the reality of the mobile games market in all its wonderful complexity and strangeness. So if you have any suggestions for us, if you have any feedback for us, you can always get in touch. You can email us at podcast@pocketgamer.biz. You can find us on Twitter @PGBiz, and you can reach out to us through the pocketgamer.biz website. If you're interested in listening to all of our podcasts, you can find them at pocketgamer.biz/podcast, and we would love to hear your thoughts on future shows.
And we've got you covered on all the major platforms, so subscribe to the audio podcast, as Brian said. Look for us on YouTube. If you want to read it, hey, you can do that too, because we have a companion post for you as well on the pocketgamer.biz website.
Tune in again for the next edition of the pocketgamer.biz podcast, and we look forward to speaking to you in the near future. Until then, I'm Brian Baglow.
I'm Peggy Anne Salz, and that's a wrap until next week.